Hello, everyone, and welcome to Step Up here in May. We're just so happy to have you with us. And today we have a very special guest, a dear friend, a lifelong friend, a guy who taught me pretty much everything I know about coaching, Ronnie Jones, who's in the Hall of Fame and Georgia's seventh winningest coach in the history of high school football, with, I think, if I'm right, 436 wins. Is that right, Coach Jones?
No, that would be good, but it's like 327, somewhere in there. 347.
347. I had the right numbers in the wrong order, right?
Yeah.
Well, we sure are glad to have you here with us, man. And it just means a lot to me to have you on the program. We go back so far, and I've had so many memories, a lot of things that we probably don't need to be saying on the podcast, but we have just had a great run at it, haven't we?
We sure have. I just always enjoy talking to you.
Same here. A lot of respect, man. You've done so much in your life. And tell us now, last conversation I had with you, well, not the last, but one of the last conversations was, you had a rough day there, and had a heart attack.
I did. It was just an unusual thing. And people feel different things, but I really didn't feel any pains. I just felt funny. So I drove myself to the Perry Hospital, and it was just kind of amazing because my wife was out of town, and they said, well, if you hadn't have done that, you might not be here, because it was what they call the Widowmaker. And the people at Perry Hospital, they sent me on to Warner Robins because they have the cath lab there. And just thankful for those people in Perry and Warner Robins. They kind of saved me. The crazy thing about the whole thing was 2 weeks earlier, I just went to get a checkup and had a stress test and all that stuff done. They said, man, you're doing good. But just lucky. God bless me. And I'm just fortunate to still be kicking.
Well, that means God's not through with you yet. You're still here for a reason. And I've never heard of anybody driving themselves or having a Widowmaker and driving themselves to the hospital, man. That's a John Wayne moment right there, buddy.
It was. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know quite what it was.
Oh, well, if you're out there listening, folks, that's an amazing story right there. And every day, we're getting up there in our age, and a lot of our guys that listen to this program in that same situation. Did the doctor give you any advice on how to prevent another one from happening?
Well, I'm on a lot of medications, and my wife keeps me straight, and she's a nurse, so that's a good thing. And I'm going this week to have an ablation done. I can't explain really what that is, but they're hoping that this ablation will help me maybe feel a little better and get me some off of some of these medications that I'm on.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I dread medicines. Golly, that's one of those things that I just really don't want to start down that road, but it's maybe inevitable for guys our age. Mm-hmm. If we want to keep staying in the game, that's maybe what we have to do. Well, I wish you well with that.
Well, thank you.
Isn't it an ablation where they run a wire and sort of laser circuit?
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. They do. I don't know if they put you completely to sleep, but they kind of get you drowsy and do this. And he says, I'll go home. The doctor says I'll go home in the same day. So doesn't sound too bad.
It's a lot different than it used to be. It's all, I guess, man alive. Drive yourself to the hospital. That's one for the books right there.
Yeah.
Well, tell me now, when you started coaching, you were at Woodland Christian in Phoenix City. Now, Wayne Trawick was your high school coach, right?
No, he wasn't my high school coach. what he was is at the same time when I was graduating from Auburn, he was the head coach at Central High School in Phoenix.
Okay.
And he would let me come and join with coaches and actually let me help coach the B team. And so, and I just copied a lot of things that he was doing. And he's no longer with us, but I don't know what I would do without Wayne Trawick. He was just a special person in my life that he just let me coach and just showed me everything I needed to know.
And he was a wing tee guru.
Well, what it was, Marty, at the time he was a wishbone guy, like a lot of people were. But so I started running the wishbone, and later on he went to the wing tee, and at that time I was going to Brookwood in Thomasville. I was going to Westfield in Perry, and that's when I started running the wing tee. That had been about 1993. So he was special. Kind of funny thing was, as we on my team, I had a fellow named Jeremiah Castile, who was All American. To show you how smart I was, he didn't start for me on defense when I was coaching the B team. He was an offensive player.
Well, listen, Jeremiah Castile, not only a great player, golly, he's a great Christian man.
Yeah.
Left a mark so many places, golly, his sons, all that. Well, now I remember, and I enjoyed our years together at Brookwood. And we ran the wishbone. Let's see, I guess we ran that maybe 3 years.
Well, when I first got there, I've done all kinds of things. We were in the I because I got a special tailback. His name was Herbert Butler, and he ended up signing with Florida State at the time, and had a big old quarterback named Bobby Link who could throw the stew out of it. And so we were in the I, but then during all the Rex 8 years at Brookwood, we were in the wishbone, ran the option and read it, and all the things you do out the wishbone.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's sort of a coach's offense. You can tinker with it. And I guess maybe the fact that there's so many options and reads. And we were lucky to have a quarterback there. Man, he could read that thing, Bill Wimberly. You remember that?
Yeah, he was. I was telling somebody the other day, we read everything. We didn't have very many plays, but he read everything we do. He didn't have size, and he was not a college prospect, but he was the best reading quarterback that I ever had. He was tremendous. His senior year, we went undefeated, which was the only undefeated season that I ever had.
Yeah, Bill was a real gamer and a leader. The guys really respected him. And like you say, he just made good decisions in everything he did. I think he went to University of Georgia, was one of the team managers up there when they won the SEC or something. Bill was quite a guy. He played basketball for me too. And he was one of those guards who never made a turnover. He just didn't make a mistake. We were lucky to have some great players on that team, weren't we?
We sure were. I think about Teppo Uramini. You remember him because he was one of your best players. He couldn't even speak English. He couldn't even speak English, and he would go home and study football out of the encyclopedia, and ended up being an all-state football player his senior year on that undefeated season. So a lot of good, and there's a lot more too, but just those two come to my mind right now, and that were seniors during that year.
Oh yeah, that's true. I texted Teppo yesterday, about that tragedy with one of the players on that team, Ross Singletary, and just checking to see funeral arrangements and all those things. But man, Teppo could jump through the roof. He had the sweetest jump shot you've ever seen. When he got the ball inside, he was going to make a play. It was just one of those things. And what a great player! I remember Heath Varnado off that team.
Yep, Heath was as good. One of these days I'm gonna sit down, and after 40 years of being a head coach, kind of make up my starters on offense and defense, and it'll be difficult, but I can promise you, Heath Varnado would be one of them. He was as good a offensive and defensive lineman as I ever had.
He just had the ability to kind of eat a block. You know, someone tried to block him, and it just didn't. It didn't matter. I mean, he was always in position, whether he was blocking or fighting off a block. Big old strong guy. And I remember, and he played basketball for me. And we were playing up in Randolph Southern, like Tuesday night or something. We had an adverse crowd, and things were going. We had some players out. Anyway, the game comes down to Heath, big tackle, big strong tackle, and he had to shoot a free throw right at the end of that game, a 1-and-1 to win. And doggone, he drained them both. I'll never forget that moment. Howard and Heath were two good guys, though, weren't they?
They were. All your teams are special, but I was young myself, so and that was, we played the state championship up in Dublin, Georgia, and I got the film around my house somewhere. My mom and daddy was at that game, and they didn't come to many, but I got that film, and you can see them on the film when we celebrated after the game. So it was kind of a special year with them being there.
Yeah, because it wasn't long after that your dad was.
Yeah, I lost both of them, my daddy at least.
Yeah. So what a great memory. That's one of the greatest things about our profession is these sweet memories that we have. I was also chatting this week with Kevin Vick.
Yes.
And he was, what a running back and a baseball player, that guy. And a guard for me. And they played 3 sports. And he was good in all 3.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was a tremendous football player. We won the state again his senior year, and we won it in football and baseball that year. And Kevin was on both teams, and he was quite an athlete. And of course, I was just so lucky, Marty. I'm just being honest. We won the state in baseball just because we had good players. It wasn't me, but to win it in football and baseball, that was kind of special. I don't remember the exact number, but, we didn't play back then about 40-something games. And we hit like 40 home runs in like 18 games. And that's how good we were. But, some good times, some good memories.
A lot of good players and a lot of good men who grew up and became something in their life, big community leaders, great Christian guys. Our FCA chapter was really strong there. It was just a different age. Those guys were motivated. Didn't have to get onto them very often. They just wanted to do right. And, hey, look, do I see Mike Peacock, who just dropped in on us? Hey, I'm sitting here with 2 Auburn graduates.
There you go.
Well, I've got Auburn graduates in my family. I'm not one. I'm a West Alabama graduate, but I got a wife and a son with Auburn degrees, and about to have another son in about 3 months with an Auburn degree. So we're gonna have a bunch of them in my house.
Was West Alabama? Did that used to be Livingston?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's what it was when I was there.
Yeah.
You went to junior college in Wadley, right, Ronnie?
Wadley, Alabama, Southern Union Junior College.
Yeah.
Ronnie, you want to tell the story? I think it's one of the coolest stories. It's about your roommate became like a world-renowned disc jockey.
It was.
Story.
When I went to Southern Union, my second year, that we got a new dorm, and they just put people in rooms together. And I guess because of our names, they put me and a fellow named Rhubarb Jones in the same room. And what he was a band director in high school, and here I was, played all the sports. But it's just amazing how we got along and become such great friends. And you're right, he is in the Country Music Hall of Fame. He is no longer with us, but we had a lot of good times, and he got famous and I didn't. But we used to come down to Perry and go to fairgrounds, and we'd go into trailers and he'd interview people. Kind of a funny story. He was interviewing Lori Morgan, and my wife. She asked my wife to open the drawer for a piece of candy, and she wasn't paying attention and slammed the drawer on Lori Morgan's hand.
Oh, goodness.
But anyhow, it was so funny. We'd go outside the trailer, and everybody wanted Rhubarb's autograph, and of course he would say, "Well, you need to get this fellow's autograph." So I signed a few autographs. So it said, "Good luck, Ronnie." They thought I was somebody special.
Well, Rhubarb was a legend in that profession. I remember when I lived up in Atlanta, I listened to him every morning, and he was, gosh, what a great DJ. He was like the best in America at one time.
He was, and he was a lot of your country singers during that time. They wouldn't have been where they are without Rhubarb, and that's the reason. That's the reason he's in the Hall of Fame and
That's
Nashville
right there.
Yeah.
Never knew he went to Southern Union. That's interesting. I remember him from my growing up days, and hearing him on the radio for many years, and never knew he went to Southern Union. That's something I did not know. You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Ronnie and I, we had 5 great years, and I remember some of he was the best practical joker that ever walked. You know, back in the day, I was coaching basketball, and of course Ronnie was AD, and he would hang around to make sure all the money was counted after the games, and all that. And one night, I'm locking up the gym. I got to lock all these. There's like 14 doors you had to lock. And it's dark. I turn off the light and it's darker, you're walking around the gym. And I'm getting to the last door, and I look in there, and there's a guy standing in there with a flashlight, shining up on his head like a horror movie. And it's funny. And he kind of reaches out at me. Scared me to death.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever, from that point on, every time I went to close the door at Brookwood, I was afraid, where is he going to be? We used to have some fun times, didn't we?
We sure did. We sure did. Some great memories, and not only that, but coaches that were coaching in that era. We've lost a lot of them, a lot of special people, and so I was thinking the other day, I have started calling some older people in my life just to say hello, because you don't ever know when it's too late, and a lot of those guys that I coach with and against are gone now. So it's a lot of good people.
Yeah, I think of Buddy Etheridge, one of the most hard-nosed coaches, and the Power I. What was he? Thomasville Central. He was Westbrook.
Westbrook. I will say a year ago they were dedicating a building for him in Quitman, Georgia. So I got to go and got to see Buddy and got to speak to him. It was just real special. He's still around. He lives down in South Georgia somewhere.
And Coach Beard. I think of Coach Beard at Terrell.
Yep, very good friends. We coached together. Those coaches, we used to talk to each other every week about opponents, because they was film exchange, and you'd call coaches to see what the other folks are doing. And that, me and Beard and Bill Murdoch and Buddy Etheridge and Jimmy Seeley, we were all close. So you didn't want to call one of us and ask something about the other team, because we wasn't going to tell you the truth. we were that close.
Those were the days, and all those guys you mentioned, very dear to my heart. They some of them not with us, and golly, there's a fraternity in coaching.
Yeah,
and it's hard to gain it of another coach. In our profession, we're all a little bit scared, of giving out information. We meet another coach with skepticism, And but when you do have a coach that you really trust, boy, you got a friend for life.
Yep, it is. It's and that, I can remember back those days, and people forget about it. We had to wait. We had those reel to reel films, and we had to wait for them to get developed. And so you spent a lot of time on Friday nights driving somewhere to get the film developed, and you'd get it developed, and the next day you'd have to put it on the Trailways bus to send it somewhere, unless you met somebody halfway. So there was some days back then that a lot of young coaches don't know what all we went. I went to one of my son coaches at Southland, and I went early last year on a Thursday night just to see him and my grandchild, and they had a dadgum robot out there painting the field. That's how much time has changed. Yeah, I don't know how many fields I've painted, and I even painted them back when we had marble dust, and sometimes I had to paint them twice because of rain. So I don't know if these young coaches could really go through what some of the things that we went through back in the day.
Oh no, man. Me and you, Coach Grooms, we put down that marble dust. I remember one time. Now see if you remember this story, Ronnie. Someone had gone down the hill at Brookwood. We had a beautiful field down. You had to go down the hill, right?
Yeah.
And they spun up with a car, spun up the grass a little bit. So we were going to catch it. We said, we're going to get those guys. So we laid out on the road a 2x4 with spikes coming out of it, with nails coming out of it.
Yeah.
And of course, we forgot about it. 2 or 3 weeks later, we're down there. We got to line the field. We had this old beat up truck that Mr. Turner gave us. We had all of our marble dust on the back. We drove it up to about the 50-yard line, and we were unloading it in our little marker, me and you. And you said, "Do you hear that noise?" You remember that story, Ronnie?
I do. That old blue truck.
That old blue truck, man. Finish that story for me.
Well, from what I remember, I just remember that we had to wait around to somebody to come help us because we couldn't do anything. That's about the only thing I remember about the old blue truck and the nail.
We ran over those spikes with those tires and flattened.
Yeah.
It had 2 flat tires, and we were in
there.
That was one of our misadventures.
Yep, sure was. Yep.
By the way, Marty, I got a message to pass on to you. And Coach Jones may know this man as well. But Thrift went over to Macon and did an interview for our Middle Georgia Sports Live folks, and he interviewed the athletic director at Central High School in Macon. And he said about 3 minutes into the interview, the guy said one of his biggest mentors in his life as a coach was Coach Marty Durden.
Wow.
His last name is Taylor. I think it's Andre Taylor. Is that right? Is it Andre?
Oh man,
he's been at Central Macon for a long time, 30 years, I think. But
yeah, he's a kid who I remember the first time I met him, he got injured, had a concussion, and we drove had to drive him to America's to the emergency room. And God, what a great coach! I got a million stories I could tell you about him, but he's one of the most influential people in my coaching career ever. We need to have him on here and let some of those stories be told. But what a great guy. And Ronnie, you got those kind of guys in your life too, don't you?
All the time. I mean, I had one text me today that I haven't heard from in a long time. Shannon Wiggum texted me, just want to know how I was doing. And, that happens. And you just don't know how many. We just had so much opportunity back in the day. Hopefully we did some things right where we must have to touch people like that, because it's I talked to Tim Cook last week, another player that is.
Yeah.
It's just, and then it's just so many out there. And I think one of the most embarrassing things here in Perry is I'll be somewhere getting gas or something, and somebody will come up to me and start talking to me. And we've coached so many people. I know their face, but I can't tell you their name, and I have to trick them into telling me their name somehow. But in 40 years, that's a lot of players.
It is. It is. So I stopped in Cuthbert one time, driving home, and at an old one of those places. They're I think the only gas station in Cuthbert. And I look over there, and this girl looks familiar, and she turns around and smiles and says, "Coach Durden." It was Louise White. Remember Louise? Great basketball player.
Yeah.
And she was driving to Thomasville. You never know, do you?
No, I was when I was placed in the Hall of Fame at Brookwood. I'm standing in line and waiting. I hope I hadn't told this story, but one of my players was there, and he walks up to me. He said, "Coach Jones, I want to show you something." And this was 35 years ago now. He pulled out his wallet, and he had I always send a little note to the players after graduation, wishing them good luck. He'd been carrying that in his wallet for 30-something years, my little note that I gave him. So you just don't never know. It is. We didn't make no money, but we had a good time and made a lot of friendships, and hopefully we touched some lives along the way.
Yeah, I think we did make a difference, Ronnie. I feel like that coaching made me better. It's not all us being a good influence on kids. One of the kids that I always held in high regard was Duke Bryan, who was our kicker.
Yes.
In the University of Georgia, and I've tried to stay in touch with Duke since those times. Jay Harvard, remember Jay Harvard, our running back?
Yeah.
Brother Cullen, the Harvard family that were so good to us.
Yes.
We could go down a list. I could think of 100 kids probably from over there in the Thomasville area, but not just there, everywhere.
Yeah. You speaking of Duke, one of probably my most famous player. They asked me when I applied for the job at Brookwood, could I coach girls basketball? And I told a lie and told them I could just so I could get the football job. And had a young lady on my team named Julie Bryan, who is now Julie Moran, who was Miss Georgia, Miss Junior Miss, and I never forget. She came to my office and she said, "Coach Jones, I'm gonna miss the region tournament." I said, "What are you talking about, Julie?" She said, "I'm in this district Junior Miss tournament thing, and I think I just want to do it." And I said, "Julie, you can't win that thing." And I said, "Even if you do, what's going to go from there?" And she, not only did she win it, she won Miss America. So if she'd listened to me, it would have been bad.
She had her own program on television where she was interviewing people at the Olympics and stuff like that. I mean, Julie
I told her not to go. She needed to play.
You need to play.
Sometimes, we had let's see, Stephanie Bentley, as I recall, that was one of our cheerleaders there, and she won a Grammy.
She did. Remember? She wrote the song "Breathe."
Breathe. That's right.
Yeah.
She wrote the song "Breathe," and I think we had another Miss Georgia. Her sister may have been Miss Georgia too. Yeah. So we were lucky. That was an exceptional bunch of young people that we had over there.
It was.
May never see that again, right? Actually.
No. I think I put all I think all the reason they have so many good kids down there is the pool room hot dogs. That's what I think.
Oh yeah, there's no question. Best hot dog in the world.
It is.
Yeah. We used to go all the way downtown just to get a couple of hot dogs. I've never had another one. Have you?
Yeah, every time I go to Thomasville, at Westfield, we played them a couple of times, and with my son coaching with him, been down there once. Every time I go, I got to have them.
How do you think coaching has changed, Coach, since we started together in what, 1980.
Well,
How's it changed?
I think one of the biggest changes to me is, you know, kids just have too much to do now. You know, they all got cars, uh, you know, and they stay on the phones all the time. We didn't have the phones, certainly. I just think they have too many things to do and maybe too many choices. You know, back in the day, I can remember kids that were having a tough time coming to weightlifting because they had to work. You know,
Yeah.
hardly any of them work now. And then, you know, kids were, I think, tougher because they did have to work and they did, you know, and you didn't have, I don't remember, you know, back in those days, we just didn't have any problems with cramps and stuff like that, like they do now, because, you know, everybody's got air conditioning now. You know, you got all these rules, and the other thing, it has nothing to do with players, but football season starts too early, by the way. I want to throw that in. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if kids have changed that much, but I think parents have changed. They, you know, look some in that a lot of them think their kid is the best in everything. And, you know, it's kind of like everybody deserves a trophy or whatever. And it's, you know, that's one of the changes too. But kids are still kids. And I firmly believe, and I always will believe, that if you treat them with respect, and treat them like they should be treated, then they're going to play hard for you. And I think that was the reason I was successful. I never grabbed one. I never cussed one. And coaches, college and high school now are doing that stuff. And you know, I don't know that I would have played through some of the stuff that goes on now, but you know, kids are still good kids. I just believe you got to treat them right and treat them with respect.
They are. You remember Scott Rayberg, who was raised on a cattle farm, Darren and Scott, two brothers. And we used to have to work. They were always working. We had to sort of plan practice for guys like that because they weren't riding bikes and riding cars and playing on the TV. Those guys were out working hard. And it seems like there's not enough of that kind of athlete, the kid who sweats and works like there used to be.
No, parents now, but kids, what they do all summer now is go to travel baseball and all this kind of stuff, and spend a lot of money on hotels. And I don't know, but I've never had very many pro baseball players, and I've coached for 40 years. Maybe two that made it to the minors, but parents have spent a lot of money on that and girls softball. It's just amazing. This travel stuff. And that was the other thing that changed a little bit towards my end of my career. I remember a kid telling me, he said, "Coach, my travel coach told me not to do any bench press anymore." And I said, "Well, you better ask your travel coach to give you a grade, because I'm fixing to fail you if you don't do what everybody else is doing in the weight room." You know, what I'm saying is they believe in their travel coaches now sometimes more than they do their high school coach. But like I said, kids are still kids. For the most part, everything was great in my career.
Yeah. What do you think, Mike, of travel ball? You've had two baseball guys and probably lived that, didn't you?
I did, and I think it's important for parents to do a lot of research. You know, and that's one thing that doesn't get done a lot of times. And you'll see kids that'll hop from one place to another. There's the faction of travel baseball that will take your money, and you'll have these big combined practices, and you don't get a whole lot of work done, and you go and you play. And you play different places, and you travel all over the place, and you spend a lot more money. And then there's other places, like we finally found one, I think when my son was 14, we finally found one, and the whole focus was development. It was a whole lot more about development and getting better and getting stronger than it was playing tournaments. Now, we played our tournaments, but those guys would, those guys were worked harder. It was much like a high school program, to be honest with you. There was a plan, there was a purpose, there was a weight program, there was a conditioning program. They all had to go through that before they started playing tournaments. And the developmental work kept going during the week leading up to tournaments. And a bunch of those guys ended up playing college baseball, including my son. And so I think I think it can be done right, but you have to find an organization that is not a money grab. And for the most part now, it's a money grab for a lot of people. They're more about how much money they can get out of the parents than they are truly developing the kids. And there's a lot of people out there that will disagree with me, and they'll say no, 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 no. Well, yeah, I've been there and done that with two of them, and I know what to look for, and I know what I'm seeing, and I know what's happening. They'll have their cream of the crop group, and that'll be who gets developed. The rest of the kids who are not quite as talented, those kids will end up footing the bill for the elite, and the elite get the attention. The other kids who really want to be developed and want to get better and could get better, a lot of times get left kind of holding the bag and playing in lesser events and not getting the training and the development and the attention that the other kids who are so-called elite get. And unfortunately, that goes on a ton in the travel ball circuit, no matter what sport it is.
Right.
It may be basketball, it may be baseball, it may be softball. Even football now, especially at the younger levels, football's got a lot of travel stuff going on, and it's big business, and you can't deny it. These organizations have these showcases, and they charge a lot of money for you to come and go through a showcase, and it's basically just a cattle call. And there's no joke, no secret. Those coaches have a list of kids that are coming in to those showcases, and those are the ones that get the most attention. And they just take everybody else's money, and it is. I'm not going to say it's a racket, because it in some ways it does help kids get exposure that may not get it otherwise, but it's a big business now. And anytime something gets to the point of being big business, something suffers. And a lot of times it's the personal touch and the influence, the real influence that coaches could have gets lost in all the business and all the dollar signs.
I guess, Mike, the reason I feel a little different than most people, I was always in a small private school. Even like 3 years in public school, it was a small school, and you have to share the athletes, and if you don't, you're just in trouble. And I had a few through the years that would, and most of the time it was baseball. I'm going to concentrate on baseball, and they would play fall baseball, and I don't know if any of those kids. I mean, I'm sure there are the exceptions. Some of them did make it to the college and got a scholarship and those type things, but it was just hard for me to lose one.
Yeah, it's just one of the biggest debates in sports right now. This overuse syndrome, where pitchers, just they're having these Tommy John surgeries when they're 15 years old, and girls are having knee injuries that played soccer so much, and it's just. I see it as a real problem, just like you do, Mike, that we're turning our kids over to coaches whose motive is money and not the development of the players. And, when we used to, Coach Jones used to teach me what to do in practice in football. It was all fundamentals. I mean, linemen went in details about how you step, intricate details about your stance, how you come out of it. I mean, it was all fundamentals, and I don't see them getting that in travel ball. Basketball teams, they just run up and down the floor and shoot.
You're right.
A dunk, and there's no fundamentals involved.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much, it's like I said, my oldest son was a part of an organization one time, and I could call the name, but I won't. But it's a big, well-known travel ball organization. And I remember we went to a called practice one time for the whole organization. I don't know how many teams that organization had, but this was high school age level. I'd say 15 and above. And I bet when we showed up to practice, we practiced over at Middle Georgia College. We met over there, and I bet there were 175 kids there. And can you imagine running a baseball practice with 175 kids? I mean, it was, nobody got a lot of individual work at all. You had to run multiple batting practices, and it was just, I was just like, I was standing there going, the old coach in me was going, what in the world are we doing? Why are we even here? These teams ought to be, if they're going to practice and get development, get work done, they ought to be practicing by themselves as the team they're going to play with their coach, and not out here at an organizational practice where the whole kit and caboodle here, where it was obvious that the kids that were on the, I don't know, the elite team, whatever that was called at that time, but there was one team that was supposed to be the cream of the crop, and those were the ones that got more reps than everybody, and those were the ones that got most of the attention, and the rest of the kids, they were just there, and they had paid the same amount of money as everybody else, and that's why when, once we got through that, and our team, our little core team that we had a really good coach, and he did the best he could under that organization to try to develop those kids. And we had a good group. We had fun. But when it got to I learned a lot from that experience. And Marty, my boys are 7 years apart. And so by the time my youngest one started coming through, I knew what I was looking for, and I knew what I wanted him to be a part of. And I knew there was some out there, and finally found this guy. And he ended up being a former Special Forces soldier who was a really good baseball player, who had got drafted out of high school and had plenty of baseball experience, but then went into the military after baseball and served. And then he started he wanted to do it right, and he's still doing it right to this day. And he develops kids from the time they get to him, and he puts them on a program to get bigger, stronger, and faster. I know that sounds familiar to you guys, because that's what we all did as coaches when we were coming up. You wanted those guys to get better, bigger, stronger, and faster. And then he did a ton of developmental work on fielding, on pitching, on hitting, and everything. And that's how my youngest son developed into the player that he was. He was getting development outside of school, but he also got some at school too, in the school program when he got in there. And so he played middle school football, went to high school, and he did not love football. He loved baseball, but he did not love football. And he thought about playing in high school, and he said, I just don't think I want to play. He said, I don't, he said, so I said, well, I'm going to leave it up to you. I'm not going to force you to. I wish you would, because I think it does you a lot of good. And then senior year, Marty, you remember this, senior year, he came out for football and ended up being our backup quarterback for a while until he got sick. And he got sick. He got sick in
year that was everybody was getting sick. That was 2020, and golly Moses. Hey, well, one thing before we're about to run out of time here, it looks like. I want to ask Ronnie one question, and then I know you got a question for me. Ronnie, what about one of the things that you always did? You always were a Christian coach, in front of these guys, and we would pray every practice. We tried. Now, every now and then we'd do something stupid, and as coaches we weren't perfect. But what do you think about the coach's position to be able to help a kid with their Christian faith in the world today?
Well, it goes back to we're the person sometimes that's going to be around them more than their own daddy. So I just felt like that, the good Lord had always blessed me, and I was always in schools where I could have prayer before practice and after practice, and I certainly wasn't going to miss the time to do it. And I sit here now and hope that maybe that helped some kid along the way. I know it helped me, and different coaches have different ways of doing things and different ways of winning, different ways of losing. But, I believe I was, again, trying to be a Christian person and treating kids right. And I was very successful doing it that way. So I'm just saying, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying you don't have to do some of the things coaches are doing now to be successful.
Right.
That's right. I played for a guy, Ronnie. I want you to know I played for a guy over in Alabama, and we prayed at the beginning of practice. We prayed at the end of practice. We prayed at the beginning of the game. We prayed at the end of the game. And this was in a public school. And I graduated high school in 1982. And that man was one of the biggest influences on me. My dad was a Baptist minister. So I grew up in church. I grew around church, and my faith was important to me. But it was tremendous to be able to play for a man. I only played for him for a couple of years because we moved there in my junior year, and played for him for a couple of years, but got to know him well, and we were real close. And unfortunately, he passed away in a car accident a few years ago. But he was one of the biggest influences on my life, and he was one of the reasons I became a coach. I went and talked to him when I was in college, and I said, Coach, I started out, I was in business, and I went back to him and I said, Coach, I think I want to go back. I said, I think I want to go back and pick up, and I think I want to go into coaching. He said, I was wondering when that was going to happen, Mike. He said, that doesn't surprise me at all. He said, I saw it in you a long time ago. And he said, I didn't know whether you were going to or not. He said, but I'm proud for you. I'm happy for you, and I'll help you any way I can. And I was able to talk to him a lot, and he was a huge influence on me. So I played for a guy like you, Ronnie, that wasn't afraid to pray and wasn't afraid to be that influence and wanted us to do right. He wanted all of his guys to do right. He wanted them to be the right kind of person, the right kind of citizen. And he wasn't bashful about talking about his faith. And I think that's huge. And I think it's huge now to see a coach that's willing to do that.
Well, I'm not trying to say that I was perfect, because I was not.
No, none of us are.
I certainly wasn't a preacher, but I tried to be a good influence on them. I hope I was. Yeah.
Well, it makes a huge difference. And, I tried as much as I never was a head coach in all my coaching career, except for being a head softball coach at a middle school for a little while. But was always an assistant coach, and I always tried to influence those kids in the right way. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do as coaches is try to steer them in the right way. And as many guys as you two have that know y'all and see y'all everywhere now, Ronnie, I don't know if you know it or not, but Marty and I worked together for a little while after we both got out of a school situation. And we rode together every day. And every town we went to, we would get out and go somewhere or walk down the street, and somebody would say, Coach Durden. And I was like, I was kind of like my wife. My wife used to say this about me. She's like, do you know people everywhere we go? We can't go on vacation. We can't go to Disney World. We can't go to Six Flags. We can't go anywhere without you running into somebody you know. Well, that's Marty Durden. And a lot of times we would run into former players and guys that he coached with and guys that he coached against. And, it's just amazing how many of them, and every one of them love that guy. And I know that's the same way about you. You guys were talking earlier about all these guys that look you up and find you. don't it feel good when that happens? You know, when somebody sends you a message out of nowhere or finds you out of nowhere and checks in with you and tells you a story
Sure
about
does.
something you did in their life. You know,
Well, I just hope maybe somebody will watch this and call their coach. That's what
hmm
or their teacher or
yeah,
someone that influenced them a little bit. 'Cause I can promise you, it means a lot when I hear from a former player.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I tell you, and that's something, you know, Marty, we hadn't mentioned that too much, but if you're out there and you're watching this show and you're listening to us talk about this and you had a coach that influenced you, doesn't matter what level it was, it could have been your middle school coach. Do what you need to do to look them up and get in touch with them and
Yeah.
tell them what they meant to you and tell them tell them a story about how you influenced them. I had a kid do that just a few years ago with me that I coached my very first coaching job in Roanoke, Alabama. Uh, and he told me a story, and I vaguely remembered it, but I didn't remember the whole thing. And he said, you know, coach, he said, you taught me a lesson that time that it wasn't about me. Now, this is one of the most talented kids in all my years of being a coach, one of the most talented kids I ever coached. And he was special. He was that kind of player. He was one of those just had it, you know, whatever it is, he had it. And he went on and played at Auburn and um, played a little professional arena football for a while. But he told me a story about when he was in the 8th grade and he thought he was the man. And uh, he said, you kind of knocked my knees out from under me in the right way. He said, you didn't take me down too bad, and you didn't do it in front of everybody and all that kind of stuff. You didn't belittle me. He said, but you taught me that I wasn't the man, that it was about all of us and not just me. And I said, I vaguely remember some of that, I said, but I had no idea that it had the influence on you that you'd be telling me about it 30 years later, and that kind of thing makes you feel pretty good that a kid remembered that and remembered the influence it had on. But I think that's great. That's what we're in it for.
Yeah.
That at least one time we did it right. At least once we got
Yeah.
it right. And coach, and my question that I always ask everybody that we have on, and I'm sure you've had this happen. But if a young person, male or female, comes to you and says that they are wanting to be a coach, or that they are already a young coach, and they're seeking some advice on what some of the things that they need to do right, some of the things that they need to do to do the job the best that they can and be the best that they can for those players. What's some advice that you would give a young guy or a young lady who was going to be a coach?
Well, first of all, I would tell them to make sure that it's something that they want to spend a lot of time doing, because that's a big part of it is the hours. The other thing that I bring up, and Marty will appreciate this, but you got to hopefully you marry the right person. Because I've been with my wife now for 50 years, and there was a lot of times that I think, well, I know I didn't be spending as much time with my own kids as I should have. So I'm just saying, make sure that you're ready to spend the time, and hopefully you got a partner that will do that with you. The other thing is, like we were talking about earlier, you don't have to belittle a kid or cuss him or whatever it is. You don't have to do that if but I'm not saying you don't need to get on somebody, because I have a bunch and it hadn't been very nice sometimes, but I always make sure I go back to that kid and apologize if I said something too harshly, or let him know that I do love him and care about him. And, so that's an important thing too, is that just treat kids right, and make sure that coaching is what you want to do, and be willing to spend that time.
I think that's great advice, and it's, you and Marty grew up, and I grew up in an era where coaching was a little bit different. And now sometimes coaches are afraid to coach hard.
Right.
But those kids need that. They need to be coached hard. They need to be loved, number one, and respected, but they need to be coached hard because a lot of times they're not hearing it at home. You know,
Right.
they're not getting that at home. And sometimes the coach, and we've all said it, we've all seen it, we all know it. You said it a while ago, Coach, that sometimes you spend way more time with them than their own dad does.
Right.
And sometimes you have to be that guy. And I think it's important for coaches to understand that sometimes you have to do some tough love, and you have to be a little hard on somebody. But there's a big difference between coaching somebody hard and getting personal with them.
Right. That's what I was trying to say.
Unfortunately, I've seen coaches that get a little personal with kids and take it a little bit too far, and it goes beyond coaching it, and it becomes more of an attack almost. And I think we got to watch that, and we got to watch other folks that we're maybe working with and pull them aside and say, hey, you don't need to take that approach. Maybe, you need to find another way to reach that kid because you might be pushing them away instead of bringing them closer. And I think that's huge.
Ronnie, I got about 10 more questions I want to ask you, but we're out of time. So you got to promise me you're going to come back.
I will. I enjoy being on here. I hope I don't overdo myself. Get caught back too much, but
we've got a million stories that we yet to explore and memories. And as the program is unfolding, I'm remembering other things too that I wasn't. Is that happening to you right now too?
Yeah, it is. I got a bunch of them. I told you the other day when we were talking, if I knew how, I could write a good book because I got lots of funny stories, and it's more special now that I went through this heart attack stuff and knowing how lucky I am that being able to do something like this and being able to talk with you and Mike is really special to me, and I appreciate y'all letting me do it.
Well, man, we're honored. We're honored to have you.
Absolutely.
Your legacy, you've meant the world to me in my life, and our friendship runs real deep. You've seen me at my worst. I've seen you at your worst. We've seen you at your best. I remember we hugged each other on maybe the coldest night in the whole wide world in Dublin, Georgia, when we won that 83 title. It was a great night, wasn't it? And
well, it was, and then you think about the other things, and I won't get into detail, but me and you had a very special night at Riverview Academy that not many people go through, and had someone to pass away on that night, and me and you didn't know where our kids were, and I guess that's all I need to say about it. But that's another end that me and you went through together.
Yeah, that's one we'll never forget. It's a bad memory. But I appreciate you, man. I love you as a brother, and we'll have you back. We'll work it out, okay?
Sounds good. I thank y'all.
All right. And
Coach, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it. I apologize for my internet difficulties, but sometimes you can't help technology. It's a wonderful thing, and it's a curse sometimes too.
No, you're right.
Thank you, guys, and we will see you down the road. God bless you.
Thank you.
Yep. And folks, don't forget, share this podcast with everybody that you can and put it on your social media, link it up and send it around. And, and as we always say, when God gives you the opportunity, when God puts that opportunity in front of you, please have the willingness and the obedience to step up and make a difference. And we'll see you next week here on the show. For Marty, for Coach, good night, everybody.